Welcome. This is the December 19th vm-bhyve production user call. We have Mark, Hans, Crichtonian, Patrick, Andrew, Jan, and myself, Michael. And I couldn't help but notice this review of a proposed, I believe, in-base bhyve config aware management thing. And perhaps some of you are listed on the review as following it. So let's take a quick look. Hopefully it's got a meaningful description. Unknown is not helpful. We've got Dave. We've got Jan. So, Jan, do you remember this one coming across your desk, what, 3 months ago? I missed the date a second ago, but
Sounds about right. I don't remember the details.
uh,
I just glanced at it and said, oh, that should be interesting. Just subscribe to so that I get updates and then ignore the updates,
yeah.
as one does.
So, to their credit, they're using the native config. Start VM. Missing a manual page. Unsure about auto start.
Uh, I put the link to the review into chat if anyone else
Oh, cool.
doesn't
Thank you.
want to type it in.
Yes, indeed. Or following the main doc. So we've got subscribers, but do we have commentary? Here's some kind of use this logo suitable. Do. Conf here. So yeah, it was recent enough that I thought, let's not let it die on a vine.
So my idea is that it would be really nice if this ties into the networking SC.D scripts. Correctly so that it can interact with things like auto bridge cleanly.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Define auto bridge. There is correct
it's
bridging, but
no,
is
no,
there
auto
any?
bridge is the RC.D script
Oh,
to
okay.
add interfaces. Basically, you can configure the RC.D script for networking to automatically add interface names matching a specific glob to or multiple globs to specific bridges so that if I have something, let's say top 27 added to bridge 3 or something.
I see.
Um, yeah, it would be nice if basically you could specify that the bhyve interfaces are auto bridged to specific bridges
Okay,
and
second
maybe
page.
even have the bridge implied or something from the bhyve configuration. So
Hmm.
To me, it's like select star from
There he is.
passwords where expiry is less than this date.
Dan, is that relating to this review or day job?
Sorry, I thought I was muted. Sorry.
That's okay. Hey, it was inspiring. Cool. So, oh, and if anything, let me go see what that date was. Can I do a magical page up to the nip? What did it do? It changed tabs on me. Let's try that again. So at the very top, it is. I zoomed in, so I lost the date. Great.
August 9th this year.
August. Thank you. Boom, August 9th. So it was recent enough that I don't want to see that get zero attention. Thank you for those who have subscribed to it. Okay, moving on. Uh, with the year wrapping up, I was hoping to get a sort of uh, position on the state of migration on bhyve. So I did try vm-bhyve migrate. If you follow its rules, it works. It's a cold migration, but it does nice things like catch up a few incremental snapshots before a final snapshot, and it shuts down a VM snapshot, sends and lets you restart and even delete the original. It's kind of cool. I confirmed with Oleg that CloneOS has not enabled the upstream live migration. He still has concerns about it in the CloneOS and I believe CBSD projects.
um,
Yes, Jan.
regarding migration, I just had a potentially crazy idea how to
I like your
handle
crazy
that.
ideas. Bring it on.
We have things like hasty and geom gate. So instead of moving the storage in ahead of time and then having to have an unavoidable downtime while you're catching up with the latest differences,
Yeah.
what if we used something like ISD between the old and the new system to kind of have the old system be the primary, and then only once it's in sync, you change the primary to the new system, and then you consider the migration done. But basically, you would forward the not yet replicated disk blocks to the origin system.
Well, so replicate in preparation for migration or all the time?
No, you would have to have a gem gate basically configured, but only use it with a single disk locally, and then you add yeah, I think they still use master slave terminology. So you use a slave, add a slave or to the other disk, and then fail over. So yeah.
Can that be injected transparently and removed, or is it a stacked layering storage layer component that you're going to live with for the life of the storage?
Well, it is a gem provider you have to manually configure, so you can use it without metadata, I think. So it wouldn't contaminate the CFS volumes or whatever. And you would have to change it at runtime. So basically, you change how you bring up vm-bhyve, but you don't change the on-disk data.
Right. Any questions for him? Go ahead, Patrick.
I get it what you're hinting at, and I really like the idea. I guess you could just statically configure a G-Gate device as the backend for the virtual disk with just a single component present, like you use, for example,
Let him finish.
like you use a lag interface with just a single member to abstract the network device name away in OpenSense high availability configurations or something. So, Jan, are you going to tell me that this is not possible, having a G-Gate with a single member? Or
G-Gate is only the GM gate component of highest is the high availability with active, passive, and the proxy to pick between.
Right. So we will set up the proxying when we want to do a live migration, and then insert that Jade device into a GM mirror to make it catch up.
Not really. That's not the idea. The idea is to always have a GM gate device, and basically you start a GM gate with or whatever. Yeah, mirror may actually work, but the problem with the mirror is that it needs a bit of metadata. So you have to give, if it's a Z-volume, okay, you could grow it, but that means that you have to enable the guest VDEV as a GM provider, which is something you normally really don't want to do, because you can't tell it to probe only one layer. A one-time mirror may work, yeah. But my idea was to use HD to always go basically through a local GM gate by default, and then just reconfigure active and primary and secondary. Yeah. I have to look that up. It's been a while since I tinkered with that.
Yeah, but we could by default run every storage backend for a VM as a mirror with a single component, and then just attach additional mirror devices to replicate, which will work with live write access and eventually catch up.
Yeah, exactly. You would basically, that's another way of doing that. If you on the host configure a mirror without a label on the disk, so that it doesn't have to probe or contaminate the disk for the guest, and you would just add a disk, wait for it to rebuild the RAID and then remove the other disk. Yeah, that would work. And that, or at least it should. With fast, you could do it actually a bit more flexible, but with more overhead.
I would hope that if your VMs are sizable, you have pre-planned out your replication and you're already replicating to the destination and can spin it up with a small diff as opposed to online and mirror, wait for a rebuild for n number of hours.
Exactly.
And have a nice
the
day.
nice thing about using a haste would be that you can basically pre-replicate, and only once you're almost done, you do that. But the other thing you could do with the approach Patrick described is to, if you have a mirror, you could on the old system already set up the mirror and wait for it to replicate. And once you have it replicate, then you stop the guest.
Yeah. Yep.
That would work to basically do it ahead of time, and then shut down, and then you have eliminated that time window by using the wait logic. And on the target system, you would just bring it up without with a single disk mirror effectively, so that you can migrate it off again.
Mm-hmm. Well, if someone's looking for a holiday science project, start sciencing. Go ahead.
Concerning your remark, Michael, ZFS is our friend, but ZFS does not provide any live replication of data that is actively written to, like Linux DRDB or John Mirror does.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. And some of us absolutely love the simplicity of replicated snapshots because you can keep track of exactly where you are at any time rather than having, say, system-generated split brain just because it's in a bad mood kind of craziness. So anyway, I do like the thought. Fortunately, you could probably spin up a prototype with some VM images downloaded directly from FreeBSD and just tinker with it in a petri dish. So I am all for that kind of experimentation. And I trust everyone here has done the rite of passage of trying to make a Z pool across various iSCSI or even fiber channel devices and found that when you fail a disk, it might really not recognize the failure because it's not a disk and pain, suffering, and weirdnesses. But yeah.
Heck, if someone wants to do a science project, we can try to use CTLD with a Lua iSCSI and an active passive CTL setup. But yeah, good luck finding documentation on that. In theory, it should work with an asymmetric access iSCSI setup, or even heck, if you can find them anywhere, you can even do it with solid touch SCSI switches. But I haven't seen those in the real world. Only seen prototypes ages ago. So yeah, if you still have it, you can do it via fiber channel.
I tried it years ago, and it just would not recognize the failure of disks. It was like, oh, all's good, all's good. Anyway, cool. Feel free to connect offline on that one. I do like science. Go ahead, Jan.
When you do it like that, you could probably put it into GM multipath, which may actually be a good idea, a use for it. But as far as I remember, GM multipath is one of the few GMs which lack direct dispatch support, so it really cripples big systems by handling all the trivial little I/O requests via the GM up and down threads instead of direct dispatching it in the current thread. So yeah.
Well,
as far as I know, nobody touched that code since I ran into that limitation in FreeBSD 12.
Oh, what exactly was the limitation?
So historically,
briefly,
the GM system had two dedicated threads called up and down for basically read, write, or other requests coming down, and the responses going back up again. And that meant that once you had significantly more than two CPUs to run, you're obviously CPU bottlenecked here, and especially because everything has to go to that thread, wake it up, lots of context switching inside the kernel.
Okay.
So Geom has added support for something called direct dispatch, where instead, if the Geom has a flag set that it supports this, so the Geom class, you can directly call it as a callback in your current kernel thread instead of dispatching through a queue
Okay.
to a single thread. And the GM multipath module, despite being not all that complex, hasn't seen that kind of attention
That's the
to
issue.
add
Got
that
it.
flag.
Okay.
Which means it looks fine on a laptop when you prototype it, because
Right.
there you have like 4 cores and everything is fine. You
Bingo.
don't see a big performance change, and you have a shared last level cache between all your cores. And once you
Yeah.
try it on a multi-socket NUMA system, yeah, pain. Like you lose 70% of your write throughput or something on a 48 core system or split over 2 sockets.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that
Out
explanation.
of curiosity,
follow.
I messed around with it and just set the flag to see how explosive the reaction is, and found out that the system just runs fine, and over 3 days, no data corruption under heavy load.
Okay.
But you can't shut down, because only on shutdown the system would just hang. And I don't know why. It would work fine. Everything performed as expected with that change, but I would have to power cycle it via the IPMI controller, because
Right.
it would just hang on shutdown and reboot.
Okay.
For a one-time event hack, that was acceptable, but of course, you have to understand what's really happening. And if there's one such bug, it's definitely not as trivial.
Got it. Thank you. Connect offline if you will. And this has been a hot topic on the lists and you name it. It seems that the latest Red Hat Enterprise Linux and derivatives like Rocky and Alma are blowing up under vm-bhyve, perhaps only on AMD CPUs, Ryzen 7600. It seems somewhat surprisingly there is a glibc issue. Has anyone, one, encountered this, two, followed along, three, determined if in fact it's fixed or not? The Alma folks had some code and they may have backed it out. So Jason Tubner was like, hey, it's fixed. But then it's like, yeah, not so fixed. So I will jump to the bottom here. But for those on both RHEL and AMD, unfortunately, Kib is in there taking a look as soon as yesterday, as recently as yesterday. Go ahead, Jan, what you got?
It looks like they used some quite new SIMD instructions, and I suppose the state isn't properly saved. And normally, you just don't see many VMs using those instructions. They optimized some code, let's say something like memcopy to use AVX512 or something. And now we see the bug, which was probably there a long time ago when we added support. And yeah, I would be interested to see what happens when you disable AVX512 support in the BIOS or inside of FreeBSD, and then the guest can't see those instruction set extensions. That then it still has to work, so there has to be a fallback path. If it works, and then we have narrowed down the output. But this is definitely a bug in the hypervisor if it only happens in the hypervisor.
I take it no one else has bumped into this?
And basically, disable instruction set by instruction set extension and figure out which one it is. If Zen2 works, diff the ones between Zen2 and 3. That should the one which is involved in the bug should be part of the diff. But yeah, I don't have to tell Kip that.
Yeah. So is this suggesting that vHive is not handling AVX 512 being, be it passed through or mapped through the hypervisor? What's a good way of
That
describing
would
that?
the obvious problem cases if the architecture state expands. Let's say we have more or longer or new registers just. And that's why my first suspect would be AVX 512 support, but I don't, if I remember correctly, Zen 3 doesn't have that. It could be some other new state which vHive does not preserve.
Okay.
In all cases, at least. So yeah.
Well, Kib is on the case and the Paw Patrol, and I'm sure it will get fixed. Patrick, you, I believe, chimed in on social media about this one. When is that? Nested vHive? There's Mark. Well, gang's all here. Let's see. Chris. Let's see. I'm going to drop this in chat. Patrick, are you familiar with this ticket?
No.
No. I somehow thought you nudged like Anjanig about it. Let's see.
Just to remind you, my social media presence is now restricted to Blue Sky. I'm not on Twitter or any other platform anymore.
Okie dokie. How's that going for you?
Very, very well.
Are there BSD people? And
yes,
Lumos people?
There are.
Okay, cool. Neat.
Peter Hanstein is there. Benedict, the OpenSense team is there. I'm missing the tech guys a little bit. My technology and open source bubble is slow to move over because probably many went to Mastodon and the Fediverse quite early. But I think the user experience on the Fediverse is just really, really bad, and I expect a Mac-like user experience on things that I use, although I'm a hardcore BSD user. So,
yeah, I'm kind of confused with that statement. It's like, well, would you like me to hold your hand? I can hold your hand on this thing and the thing. But yeah, okay. So
my entire Tolkien and language and linguistics and literature bubble is over there, as well as all the German lefties that I used to communicate with on Twix. So they are all moved over to Blue Sky, actually.
Fantastic. Okay, so I thought it was you. I could be wrong. Maybe it's a different PH. That it apparently is long time impacting people. Ed Master and some C alsos. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, that VTNet thing, of course, is from me. I reminded Entrink again that we're still waiting just for 2 or 4 sentences from him in the tickets, so people working in FreeBSD are aware of what he found out.
I pulled him into the FreeBSD Enterprise Working Group call yesterday where that topic came up.
For Walter.
And that talk has been recorded. I don't know if it has been made publicly available yet.
So about that, I pinged him just before the call. He's busy with a capture the flag, but he said it was just classic disable LRO TSO. But maybe that's an incorrect statement.
Yes, no. The issue is a bit more complex.
Okay.
That workaround works.
Yeah.
But it has performance implications.
Yeah.
Because that means, and I think you don't just have to disable LRO TSO, but you have to disable the layer 4 checksum offloading of UDP and TCP, which means that now the guest, in this case FreeBSD, but supposedly different Solaris derived operating systems are also impacted by this. So they now have to compute the checksum of every byte going in or out of the network on the CPU again, like they are back to an NE2000.
Goodness.
And
okay.
modern data rates, that's not very nice because you really don't want to have yet one more copy to every packet. It works for a low-speed virtual machine. Okay, it's just
well, again, it works on your laptop and then it's terrible in production, eh?
Yeah, exactly. It makes it. But supposedly the problem is that VirtIO net power virtualized device is very closely tied to some Linux network stack implementation details and basically exposes capability flag, which are almost a one-to-one mapping to certain flags inside Linux networking structs. So, and because FreeBSD partitions those informations across different bits in a different way, there isn't a neat one-to-one mapping like there is on Linux. And of course, now that it has been effectively turned into a device, it's immortalized like that. And FreeBSD to get to use this offloading feature successfully as a guest operating system needs to either find a way to decode it into our flags or potentially change our flags so that we can encode it. And I don't remember who brought that detail up, but again, the call was recorded.
Okay, and Tom Jones is in there such that hopefully the right folks are looking at it. It's only been there since 2012. Goodness. Okay. So moving on. Antreneg would like the world to know that his dtrace issue on headers and goodies is still a problem. Mark Johnson commented, did that ever work? And it's not clear who
the answer
the go-to
yes.
dtrace owner is. Yes, he's had to stay on older versions. You're right. Thanks for the reminder. Moving on. Yesterday's or 2 days ago, there was a enterprise working group call, I guess yesterday. And that networking topic came up. Antreneg was present. And so they brought up this notion of the FreeBSD manageability API. And they gave examples of like, oh, wow, Oxide has bhyve live migration in their very tight, closed environment. And then, they have also management of 3 different subsystems. So Antreneg and I chatted, and I made this polite request. Let's look at all the prior art here, because he made a very good point that Devin tried to make BSD config a pretty universal BSD configuration tool. It's in the name, to configure a system, but then found that, wow, we've got several packet filters, we've got several virtual networks, we've got several ways to do so many things. So what does it even mean to have an API for managing a system if the system can have so many different identities, for lack of a better term? So they mapped out the concern. I'll drop it in chat. If you've got some very clever prior art ideas there, great. I almost love what Jan you've proposed on saying, hey, we at least manage system services this way with proper supervision in a nifty incremental way that's UCL based, and have little hooks to update when needed, rather than, well, let's go utility by utility, try to have XML in, XML out, JSON in, JSON out, UCL in, who knows what. So how did you interpret this, Jan, as this
I didn't,
vision for the
because
future?
you didn't drop the link into the spreadsheet, and I didn't type it off in time, so I didn't.
He did eventually. It did make it, but yeah, it was several minutes later. So here's the doc. It's in chat. All are welcome to comment. I know, Patrick, you want the ultimate visual Mac-like middleware control behind the scenes with this API, but the path to it is something that I will not. I shouldn't use the phrase "the hill that many have died on," but pick your phrase of choice. It's a tough one.
I guess
perhaps more complex than they admit. Go ahead.
I'm perfectly fine. Jan, you first.
It would either have to be something limited in scope, which completely owns your system, like what Trunas does, where the middleware owns the host system. For them, it's an implementation detail of the host system because it's not exposed to the user. But if you go into a Trunas system and put some random shell script into your etcrc.conf, you're in for a bad time. Although in theory that's supported on FreeBSD, it's not a good idea, but you're allowed to put code in there, not just variable assignments. At least if you only use bare bones FreeBSD tooling. So yeah, or it would have to be something more like modular runtime to closer to something like Ansible or the like, where you add modules per subsystem and then it manages the subsystem, and you specify that subsystem, and if you are too clever, you can still shoot yourself in the foot, of course, but at least it wouldn't be expected to break just because you change something by hand. It would at worst undo it or something, and it wouldn't automatically undo it. Unlike rebooting a tuner system where, okay, let's regenerate the config files from our SQLite database or whatever they're using.
I would not
Or
agree
you have
throw-
to.
Yeah, Jan, finish him, let Patrick take over. Go ahead.
Take it all.
Patrick, go for it.
Okay, so I do not agree to throw pfSense, OpenSense, and TrueNAS into the same bucket.
Okay, sorry
Yes,
about that. Which one is appropriate?
Jan mentioned TrueNAS, but I
Okay.
do think that OpenSense is a different beast altogether, and that they have a much better vision for the future and of integration of the upstream OS and their, let's call it middleware, for lack of another word, and UI. The first thing that I wanted to say when I joined this particular topic was that I would, being a Mac user or not, definitely go for API first and user interface second.
Okay, good.
There should not be a user interface function that does not use the API.
Agreed.
TrueNAS succeeded on that part. The entire UI uses the middleware API, but their development model is, for historical reasons, lots of manual work, quite intertangled with the BSD OS, and not really a model to aspire and to imitate. While Franco and friends at Deciso for OpenSense have a much cleaner view of where to divide things, how to layer things. But it's a real major undertaking, and we should probably just talk to them and invite Franco for once. He gave a great presentation in Dublin at EuroBSD about the development model, and I think they're doing really, really good work.
I was about to ask, are there any development docs they've published, or just the Dublin talk?
Just the Dublin talk.
Okay,
there are
fine.
Of course, all the development environment and all the architecture is open source, but it's written for developers. There is no bird's eye view of how they do it. That was the Dublin talk only.
Well, better than nothing.
Yeah, that was really good. And just a warning, they are nearing, when did they fork pfSense to become OpenSense? A decade ago or something? Almost.
In a minute, yeah.
And since they started out, they are refactoring the entire UI to center around an API-centered model view controller development architecture, and they are about 70% finished now, after all these years. So just keeping up with the continuing development of the firewall product and the FreeBSD base system in the first place, while refactoring the entire thing in situ, is just incredible workload. So don't underestimate how much work it would be to put an API on FreeBSD configuration.
Do you recall the title of his talk? I'm not finding it with OpenSense in the name. There's a Dan Langell. Cool.
I'll look on YouTube.
Here, I'll drop the playlist into the thingamabob. Okay, so it's in the chat. Go ahead, Jan. You data model first.
I would say
API.
that it's basically impossible to foresee all the possible use cases for FreeBSD within an API, and to come up with an API, I would say you have to start with what do you want to model and how do we want to treat it, things like open world versus closed world assumption and so on. Do you consider it valid to infer negatives out of what you know? Yeah. And
I have an advertisement before I have a title on the video. Thank you for the video, Patrick. Oh, yes. Stop. Okay. Oh my, come on, die. Did you get to hear any of that? Or did it freeze my connection? That was awesome. The video launched and it just grabbed all interrupts on this little poor machine. Okay, where were we?
We heard it until about 15 seconds ago. So,
Goodness, I am so sorry, the poodle. Okay, so it doesn't have OpenSense. It has like a noodling or tootling. So I will put the link here. Thank you for that link, Patrick. Computers are terrible. So yeah, let's boil the ocean. Just keeping the build options working is a nightmare, and 14.2 has a whole bunch of breakage. So that's awesome that we can, have comprehensive coverage on something as wild as an API. And hey, maybe there's a completely awesome approach we're not thinking of. But the promised land is promising. For those who care about vm-bhyve, users repeatedly bump into the fact that, oh, it's setting up network for you. It's not setting up in an optimal manner. A colleague bumped into that, and it's like, wait, I thought this is a solved problem. And that said, documentation. There, I said it. Moving on, has anyone seen the FreeBSD weekly network stack reports? This just flew by on social media, and I thought that is vaguely interesting. There are a whole bunch of placeholders, except when you get to one, let's click a random one. Boom. Hey, folks.
Yep.
It sounds like you've heard of those. And do we know who's maintaining them?
Yeah, if you go to the starting page of that
Okay,
URL,
my bad.
Tom Jones and someone else to TJ, I think.
Tom Jones, TJ, and JT, or that is elegant. Love it. I'm backing up. Tom Jones, yes. Oh, good work, Tom. Hallelujah. Goings on. Falls down. So between the presentation, between the organization of it, between the simple design, I thought that is cool, and maybe more things should be communicative like that. Bless his heart. Okay, moving on. Totally orthogonal, but there is a interesting patch set for SSSD on FreeBSD that is rather fresh from 3 days ago. That comes up a whole bunch in my circles of like, wait, why is joining a FreeBSD system to, say, a directory service is such a nightmare? I hope he gets some attention. I hope the ticket gets some attention. Okay, figuring that one. Venturist. Okay, you're following along there. So I put it in chat. Enjoy. Good luck, Fluffy KHV. So other topics before, hopefully, I don't know, Craytonian, did you find your VNC resources? We're using the UEFI firmware.
Just one thing to add to the motivation. The SSSD, integrating a current Debian or Ubuntu system with Active Directory via SSSD is an absolute pleasure. This stuff just flies. That's great.
SSSD. So if one were to say, thank you, Patrick, I'm going to go look at that wiki page, blog post, whatever, what documentation would they turn to? Because it sounds like you've got it working well. I believe
yes.
Daniel has it working well. Please shoot off over. Yes, boom, Craytonian. Indeed, the bhyve UEFI goodies are it. It may be dated with like, here's how you repack your Windows ISO, but excuse me, the fundamentals are still there. And yes, when the UEFI firmware arrived, it not too late had a VNC client that is not super secure, it's not super fast, it's not super anything, but it's a thing. Okay, how to join Debian to an Active Directory. Okay, so Patrick, what about joining a FreeBSD system? And yes, Andrew, as
I was going to say on the VNC thing.
Yes.
I assume you on the FreeBSD side it works similarly, but I know on our side it binds to I think to a Unix socket that we usually just make some kind of other connection with.
Mm-hmm.
So you can either, send it out over a secure connection of some kind, or
I see.
just use if you're not as caring, just use something like NC.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
On FreeBSD, it does by default at least bind to a TCP socket on the loopback instead of a Unix socket. Using a Unix socket is a good idea. So that, yeah.
Okay. I mean, but even binding to uh, localhost is you can then just connect to localhost using something to manage that at that point.
SSH port forwarding, whatever.
Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah.
Cool. So, other topics, questions, ideas. Do we want to do some bug busting with Mark? What you got?
I'm probably going to drop off. Need to have a
Understood.
discussion about air conditioners.
That's a chilling subject.
Unfortunately, not as much as I'd like.
In December. Okay. Unless it's for
a lot of
servers.
machines.
Oh,
it's for the servers.
Oh. Well, that's
have
cool.
a good afternoon.
Take care. Have a good week.
Bye.
Bye. So, other topics. Hans, Dan, this. It looks like did Salter put his Clara post in GitHub form? Let's take a look. Navigation children to the wiki page. Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, and Mark, any and all guidance on proper techniques for be it documenting or bug busting are appreciated because many of us just see what we see and run on autopilot. Okay, 0 to vm-bhyve. Yes, I sense a rite of passage to UEFI.conf. Do we know if that's using the new vm-bhyve native format or is it something he generated? There we go. Yeah, that looks like something he probably just sources and pulls in those variables. That's one of many ways to do it. So at least it's not hiding the underlying syntax from you. Thank you, Clara, for that. Package installed. So yeah, Craytonian, I hope that there's an approach, but vm-bhyve very much has a notion of Windows guests and goodies. So we took a look at this. We took a look at, I'm going to go through some tabs here. Active domain, FreeBSD. There's that SSSD. Hopefully that can be pretty much in sync with the Debian docs that Patrick, you kindly shared. There's the API management doc, and here we are, broken KVM, but do we have a list of tickets? Let's see. Oh, look. What do you know? We've got a list of virtualization tickets. And if I zoom out, are we talking sorted by date? So yeah, My request to anyone and everyone is that if you see tickets that say, "Oh, yeah, that's fixed, thanks," but they're not closed, could you just let Mark or myself know, or nearly anybody, just be noisy about it? Because it's not helpful to have that kind of completely irrelevant baggage. And then come things like top tickets that are obsolete in other ways. I'll put that politely. So if we were to go just old 2016, I think it's memory leakage on a Windows 7 VM, which is a bit ironic because Windows 7 was not yet quite a first-class UEFI client. And a brief comment on workflow, I reached out to Joseph regarding his 3 or so PRs and have not heard back. 2017, 18, 19. Mark, any words of wisdom on addressing these, or shall we just keep at it one by one, group by group? For example, often you see a bunch of assertion fail. It's one person reporting a bunch of things they got from a test suite. I forget if they promised to consolidate those. Let's see who that was. But yes, we all want a nifty API. I want working build options and a lot less tickets relating to these components. Eyes on the prize, eyes on the prize. Okay, this is out of Korea. So yeah, and I believe our friends in Illumos land said that Garrett is a lovely interface for tracking such items. And I'd be curious what key distinguishing factors are there. And of course, if someone's looking for a completely random science project, wanting to get their feet wet, looking at you, Craytonian, just grab a ticket where they say, hey, this scenario that probably doesn't have a nifty set of start and stop scripts doesn't work. Well, okay. OpenBSD 6.7 seems to have had an issue with GPT. Give it a try. A 9P ticket. Righty. Yeah, an AMD. Very powerful, very fast. Often having weird issues like the glibc one we saw.
Yeah, can you would it be too much to ask? Could you either put that in the meeting notes and like tag me on it, like just that ticket, so I know, just so I have an example, or
Oh, sure.
send it to me in Discord, and I'll get back to you about it.
Oh,
I'll look
so
at it
yeah,
today for
I'll
sure.
drop in this search because the search is handy. I think I've done it by reverse order just so we see those old ones and hopefully can knock the 2016 tickets off. Some of them were like 2012. Have you used OpenBSD?
Me? No, but that's my goal. My goal
Okay.
is to
Oh,
go to
great. Here,
OpenBSD, and I want to contribute, but it's like I don't know, because OpenBSD, from my understanding, is a research project, and for people
nope,
who want to
it's
use
running the
it.
world. Oh, if you use Windows, you use OpenSSH in it, and it's everywhere. So no, they are one of the most heavy lifting wholesale OSs out there, with people not quite realizing how much OpenBSD code they use. I've dropped the specific ticket in chat. And a broader conversation from earlier in the week is like, well, if we've got these tickets, what are the guarantees we need to make, and what are the exotic, nifty but not our problem things like what was the example? React OS under nested bhyve under KVM or something. It's like, well, yeah, that's very cool. I'm glad it works to some degree, but wow, that's not a core promise of FreeBSD or Illumos. bhyve PRs are sorted. Date for science weekend science fun. Okay. So no worries if this is not the most exciting thing to you. I cannot blame you. Anything else while we're at it, or shall we call it good? I think next week is quite a holiday week. Everyone's welcome to join socially. I do not lock up the channels or have a waiting room or anything. It's your call, not mine. Come on, what you got? What you got?
I got nothing.
You got nothing. So it's
No.
1903 UTC.
January 9th for next installment? Or
Probably.
what do you guys think?
Well, I've got a million things to do, so I'm not going to have any hesitation in saying we're good, but we're good, we're done. Would anyone like the honors?
Like and subscribe.
Thank you, Jan. Have a great rest of the week and weekend, and happy holidays. Take care.
Same to you.
Oh, you can really hear the motivation.